Chapter 4, Ra Speaks. Since I channeled this chapter and most of the processes in the workbook section, I want to clarify what I mean when I say I channel information or light beings. Firstly, I never bring other entities into my body, nor will I ever. Doing so is extremely hard on the physical body, sometimes even dangerous, except in rare cases. Most entities or disincarnate beings who come into a human body do not know how to take care of it, so that it remains unharmed by the experience. Besides, bringing an entity into the body is just simply unnecessary. I am extremely clairaudient as well as clairvoyant, clairsentient, and intuitive. Respectively, I have full sensory hearing, vision, feeling, and knowing. I channel by first going into a full multidimensional higher self alignment, similar to what is described in Chapter 13. After that, one of two things happens. An etheric being may stand in front of me or above me, presenting itself to my clairvoyant vision and talking to me. If I am teaching a class or giving a private session at that moment, I then repeat the message from this sentient being, word for word. If I am alone, I merely listen and assimilate, or write the message down concurrently. Alternatively, with the Pleiadians more than with the Ascended Masters, I may receive words through my higher self channel and spontaneously speak them or type them into my computer. Words inside my head as they are transmitted to me, since I always remain in my body. Afterward, I can usually remember the essence of what was said, but not the details. This is because I am in a trance or altered state during such a transmission. Even though I am in my body, my consciousness is operating from a much deeper state. This state is of a higher frequency than the one in which I have normal conversations with my eyes open. The following material was channeled in this manner, a message from Ra. You and your planet are undergoing a unique and wondrous transition in your spiritual evolution at this time. You are preparing for a quantum leap unlike any that has ever occurred before. In order to help you understand this more fully, I must first tell you about the orbit of the entire Milky Way galaxy around the great central sun of all that is. Just like your solar system, which we call a solar ring, orbits around the galactic center, the Milky Way galaxy itself moves through space in the form of a continuous spiraling circle, the Great Cosmic Spiral. At the completion point of a multi-billion-year single circular orbit around the great central sun, our galaxy connects diagonally to the next ring on the great cosmic spiral, like going up an electron spin in the ring. When this diagonal move from one ring of the great cosmic spiral to the next takes place, all of the planets, solar systems, and their inhabitants simultaneously take an initiatic step into a new evolutionary cycle. This is occurring now. You are not only at the end of a 26,000-year precession of the equinoxes, which the Maya precisely noted to the day and called the Pleiadian cycle, but the entire Pleiadian system, which includes your solar ring, is at the end of a 230 million year orbit around the galactic center, and the entire galaxy is at the completion of its infinitely longer orbit around the great central sun, which the Maya call Hunab. These 3 cycles are synchronistically completing the last step of this spiral dance within a dance within a dance, making this a very crucial transition time. The objective is to finish the dance and begin the new one without anyone's toes getting stepped on. Then the next, more sophisticated and more graceful dance will begin right on time. What this adds up to in terms of Earth's planetary evolution is this. When the 100,000-year Ice Age ended nearly 15,000 years ago on your planet, this galaxy was midway in its diagonal shift to the next ring on a great cosmic spiral. The old dance had ended, and the new one was being prepared for. In order to prepare for the next evolutionary spiral, the entire galaxy entered into a cleanup period of past karmic patterns that came to completion on Winter Solstice 2012. Karmic cleanup always happens at the end of a major cycle. Whatever is left unresolved from the previous evolutionary spiral is brought to the surface to be acted out one final time for the purpose of transmutation and transcendence. This process is not able to be ignored or bypassed by anyone on the planet. When this house cleaning is completed, a different evolutionary cycle in relationship to Mother, Father, Prime Creator, God-sciousness, all that is Hunab begins. This house cleaning is being completed now. Rebirth and initiatic spiritual leaps are experienced during such a transitional time. The consciousness birthed are products of new paradigms and new potentials, and they benefit from all of the learning of the previous spiral, although they do so mostly unconsciously to most entities. Metaphorically, it is like you take all of the dance steps you learned in previous lessons, polish up on the rough spots, master them, and then begin to add new steps that are much more exciting and challenging. Even the rhythm of the music speeds up. When the next ring on the great cosmic spiral of the galaxy and Earth's next 26,000-year precession cycle began in the year 2013, the following began to take place. 1. Pole shifts repositioned Earth in relationship to the Sun. 2. The Sun simultaneously began to reposition itself with similar pole shifts relative to the Pleiades. 3. The Pleiades began to undergo a spiral completion, which repositions the Pleiades relative to Orion. 4. Orion began a complete upheaval and spiritual house cleaning. The entire Orion system went dark for a period of what on Earth you would call 24 hours, and there were pole shifts of every star and planet in that system. Spiritual cleansing of many planets in that system, cleansing of karma, and a reopening and rededication of Orion as a galactic gateway to the galactic center of this galaxy and beyond was initiated and completed. Sirius had been serving that function for roughly the last 300,000 years. since the Lyrans invaded Orion and interfered with access to the galactic gateway then. Number 5. Sirius, in turn, was elevated to the position of a galactic spiritual mystery school, instead of one operating specifically for its own solar ring and regional arm of the galaxy. 6. Instead of the current orbital pattern of your solar ring around Alcyone, the central sun of the Pleiades, the entire Pleiadian system will begin to orbit around Sirius. Sirius will be the new central sun for this arm of the Milky Way galaxy, and in 2013 the Pleiades became part of the Sirius star system, as well as your sun. At the vernal equinox of 2013, when all of these preparations were initiated, the entire Pleiadian solar system, which includes your sun as its 8th star, became a system of higher learning and a home to cities of light. Cities of light are places where entire populations are spiritually aware of evolution and the sacredness of all things. All residents of cities of light recognize and live for the spiritual evolution and growth of themselves as individuals, as well as the rest of their group and all of existence. In other words, their lives are dedicated to serving the divine plan, and they are, at the very least, at the level of cosmic Christ consciousness. Earth and your solar ring are the last in the Pleiadian system to make this shift. Each of the Pleiadian 7 solar rings began to elevate to its next higher evolutionary function when the spring equinox dance of 2013 began. Prior to that shift at the end of 2012, Earth underwent a spiritual and physical house cleaning corresponding to what have commonly been called Earth changes. These changes, which have already begun back in the 1950s, intensified both externally and internally as your solar ring moved deeper into the photon band, a high-frequency cosmic emanation from the galactic center. The Maya predicted this 2,000 years ago. You have been going into the outer edges of this photon band for 50 years, and by the end of 2050, you will be completely immersed in the photon band for the next 2,000 years. Sacred encodings necessary for your solar ring's spiritual awakening and evolutionary leap began to be transmitted to your sun and then to the earth and all of your solar ring through the galactic center, Sirius, Alcyone, and the star Maya, which is one of the major stars in the Pleiades, where the Mayan calendar was relayed to Earth from. Once this 100-year initial transmission period is completed, your sun will continue to transmit the encodings to the entire solar ring. These photonic emanations and encodings will be of such extremely high vibrational transmissions that they will require that your central nervous system, emotional bodies, and bioelectric bodies be well tuned in order to be capable of withstanding these higher vibrations. Author's note: Barbara Hand Clow gives a much more detailed description and story about the photon band and the cosmological changes in dimensional relationships we are undergoing in her book called The Pleiadian Agenda, A New Cosmology for the Age of Light. And now back to Ra. Many of you are already experiencing an intensification in your own growth and clearing processes as your planet goes in and out of the edges of the photon band. The increase in frequencies will continue to accelerate without let-up until 2050, when the whole galaxy is fully anchored in its new orbital pattern, and Earth is initiated as a mystery school and home for the cities of light. Floods, earthquakes, changes in land masses, volcanic eruptions, and eventually a complete pole shift will all take place within the remaining years of this cycle. You who now live on Earth must choose whether or not you are ready to become spiritually accountable human beings in order to remain on Earth beyond that time when it is officially initiated into a galactic mystery school. Those who do not wish to remain on Earth will be taken to another planet in a different part of the galaxy, where karmic lessons and third-dimensional evolution will continue. No judgment is upon those souls whatsoever. Those who do intend to stay must learn the new dance of the Age of Light that requires opening and activation of the divine Ka, all of your chakras, and activating your Merkaba. Unless the Ka is fully functional, your body simply will not be able to withstand the higher frequencies as the ever-intensifying photon band light fills the atmosphere of your planet and the bodies of all who remain. So, the appropriate and only attire that is acceptable for the new dance is your costume. The harmonic convergence in 1987 was on day 1, Keen 1, Glyph 1, and Tone 1 of the Divine Mayan Zolkeen calendar, called Initiating Sunrise. This was a planetary wake-up call, notifying all planetary citizens to learn the new dance and embrace a win-win philosophy in order to make it to the pole shift in 2050. This ceremony was infected by the Darktilians and the false light teachings of Jose Arguelles and the dream spell. It is completely fake and a distraction. The real, true count, Divine Mayan Zolkeen calendar came to Earth from the Pleiades over 5,000 years ago and is in complete harmony with the precession of the equinoxes. However, the harmonic convergence was a very positive experience and a message globally to learn about co-creation for the mutual benefit of all affected, and to understand mind linking and meditation with higher collective consciousnesses. This event was not actually limited to the 2-day experience that occurred at that time. There will be ripples going outward, but the pond needs to be cleaned from the remaining detritus of falsehoods. Author's note. Once, in a hypnosis session, I was taken to a place outside Earth's atmosphere where the higher collective consciousness of all of Earth's souls existed. In this place, I saw billions and billions of smiling, loving faces without bodies, the higher selves, encircling the planet from just outside a clear bubble surrounding Earth. This higher collective consciousness was exclusively made up of loving, sweet, intelligent, innocent, higher self light beings. All of us living on Earth have our consciousness in this light bubble. These beautiful ones were observing and sending love and encouragement through the bubble down to their counterparts on the planetary surface. They also watched from a perspective of facilitating the greatest good for the whole. At that time, I was only an observer. As a whole, they were planning various earth changes, which we might call natural disasters. In particular, I watched them plan a large earthquake and realized it was the quake in 1995 in Japan, in Kobe. Observations were being made about the robot-like behavior of the people there, their absorption in materialism, and their lack of loving connections to all of their neighbors. The consensus decision within the higher collective consciousness to ask for an earthquake in Japan was not, by any stretch of the imagination, a punishment whatsoever. The beings were emanating love and goodwill to that part of the planet in a concentrated way, hoping the quake would awaken the people from their spiritual sleep and help them rearrange their priorities in life and become more loving and cooperative with one another. In fact, there was a feeling of delight and joy among the beings of the higher collective consciousness because they had found a way to help their human counterparts evolve. Of course, they all knew that the death of the physical body was nothing to mourn. In response to their decision, a message was sent to Syrian light ships at the edge of Earth's atmosphere to begin the process of creating an earthquake. I was shown the process that was used to accomplish this task. Throughout the layers of what we would call Earth's atmosphere, there are many circular rings of spiritual plates that correspond to the tectonic plates of the Earth's surface. These multiple layers of plates are geometric in nature and continue beneath the Earth's surface to approximately the inner core of the planet, which is about a half-mile in diameter. When an earth change is to be brought about, the Syrians shift the atmospheric spiritual plates in the farthest outer layer from Earth first. All of the atmospheric plates are then realigned layer by layer to match the exact proposed position of the tectonic plates in order to effect the desired changes. When the outer layers are completed, the inner subterranean plates are at last shifted to correspond to the outer ones. And then the earthquake happens, realigning the tectonic plates with the new positions of the atmospheric and subterranean spiritual plates. Volcanic eruptions, floods, and other planetary changes are brought about in much the same manner. There are also planetary changes that occur naturally when the inner and outer plates shift on their own in response to pressure buildups, contamination by pollution, and psychic energy. Holes in the ozone layer, reductions in the rainforests which change the atmospheric balance, excessive mining, geothermal tapping, and government-engineered underground explosions and experiments. Not all Earth changes are engineered by the Syrians. However, At times, natural disasters are even lessened in their seriousness by the Sirians in response to requests from the higher collective consciousness. People on Earth can assist in this process by aligning with the higher consciousness through meditation and living in truth. I am aware of several earthquakes and volcanic eruptions that have been lessened or completely prevented in this way since 1990, mainly due to the alignment of human consciousness with higher collective consciousness. Continuing with my experience, one volcanic eruption was completely prevented in Mount Shasta in 1991. Earlier that year, I was given a clear vision and message that Mount Shasta would erupt in November. Within 1 week of my prophetic vision, I ran into a local astrologer who told me he was predicting a volcanic eruption in November as well. He told me about his prediction without first knowing of my own, of course. That same week, word came to me that a local Native American medicine woman had received identical information about the predicted event and timing of Mount Shasta's volcanic eruption. In late August of that year, I stood outside in the rain and watched the most amazing electrical storm I had ever seen. Unusually wide bolts of extremely sharp and bright lightning poured from the mountain and dissipated high up in the atmosphere. There were several such storms over a 3-day period, after which a deep calm coming from Earth and Mount Shasta could be felt by everyone. I was told that enough people had cleared and transmuted the buildup of emotional and lower astral negativity, that the hierarchies had intervened and assisted in dissipating the built-up charge in the mountain that would have otherwise been released as a volcanic eruption. As myself and others who were consciously involved in spiritual growth, meditation, and alignment with higher consciousnesses were clearing the atmosphere on the surface of the earth, the Sirians decided to shift the atmospheric plates to match the shift in the tectonic and subterranean plates that had been occurring. When the plates in the atmosphere were realigned and the buildup of electrical charges were released through the lightning storms, there was no longer a need for volcanic eruption. Now back to Ra. When a person has reached a certain point in the evolution of consciousness, he or she may be living in an area where a massive earthquake or floods kills an enormous amount of people, yet he or she simply ascends to the next dimensional level vibrationally and experiences a spiritual elevation instead of physical death. These people may even assist others who are ready to embrace the light at the moment of their passing in making the vibrational shift as well. In areas of large floods, earthquakes, fires, and other earth changes, where fear, denial, hate, greed, and anger have created dense, lower astral, amorphous energy planes, souls are usually entrapped by these illusory realities at the time of death. However, light beings are always there to assist those who are willing to free themselves from the illusion of fear. Beings who ascend instead of experiencing physical death at those times can elevate the entire area around them to a light field where those who wish to evolve and enter the light may take refuge and make the transition smoothly. Those who perform this service choose to do so prior to entering their physical lifetime and generally have past life experience working with souls going through the death transition period. They may not remember this at all until the moment of their physical death. Death is nothing to be feared, dear souls. Those who are genuinely committed to the light and are living in it and truth will simply move to their next higher alternative. Others will be given choices every step of the way. They can choose to progress spiritually through their experiences, going through a life review assisted by their guardian angels, or they may choose to remain in fear and illusion. No judgment. It is vital that all judgment be ceased completely with regard to those whose bodies are killed in these earth changes and any other situation. Some people will choose natural disasters as ways of leaving the physical earth plane because their higher consciousnesses realize that their human selves have gone a little too far into the illusion of fear to change in this lifetime at all. Other beings will exit the earth plane in this way in order to assist others to move into the light, as we mentioned, during the death transition, and to set the pattern of ascension. Yet other souls will choose these natural disasters, including viral, as a way of dying, because they are ready to leave the earth and go on to another planet in their evolutionary journey. Still others will die physically without natural disasters because their body genetics and cellular mutations are too extreme to be transmuted in the remaining time for the transitional process on the planet by 2050. Regardless of why a person's body dies, or in the case of ascension, appears to die, the collective higher consciousness has a significant enough influence to see to it that there are no accidents. It is not possible for any human being to die in any way that they are not supposed to die. Those who leave the physical world and their bodies die fully intend to leave in that method spiritually. Those who remain on earth will have the responsibility of assisting one another both in the physical survival and in spiritual evolution, additionally in cleaning up the planet. By the year 2050, everyone who remains on Earth must understand the following 4 evolutionary principles. Number 1, the human purpose on Earth is to evolve physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. 2, every human being has a divine essence made of light and love, whose nature is pure goodness. 3, free will is an absolute universal right. Impeccability calls on the small self to surrender its free will to divine will in faith and trust. 4, all of natural existence is sacred, holy, and divine beyond how it serves or meets the needs of the individual humans. At this time, every human being is being presented with these 4 spiritual principles in subtle or direct ways. It is a planetary law that, before the end of a major time cycle, such as the one occurring on your planet, every single living person must be reminded of the 4 evolutionary principles they are expected to embrace. Some people will receive these messages through books such as this one, or The Return of the Bird Tribes, or The Celestine Prophecy, or The 5th Sacred Thing, or Mutant Message Down Under, or The Pleiadian Agenda, and so on. Other people will receive some messages through movies such as Dances with Wolves, Little Buddha, Star Trek IV, The Return to Earth, The Emerald Forest, and so on and so on. These books, by the way, and movies were provided by Amora Kuan Yin, not by Ra. Back to Ra. Many other humans will have near-death experiences and return to their physical bodies spiritually changed and able to effect change in all of those around them. Many people will have visitations from angels, ascended masters, Mother Mary, Yeshua, and so on. Such visitations have already been reported often in this century and have been increasing in the last 30 years. The message of evolutionary consciousness and sacredness of all existence will also be given subconsciously to all of those who see, wear, or hold certain objects such as crystals and gemstone jewelry. These are only examples of ways in which the planetary movement to impart these 4 spiritual truths take place. Your part in all of this is to live right, to live in truth, to learn about and practice impeccability, and to pray to know more of the divine plan and your place in it. You are here to heal and clear yourselves on all 4 levels as much as possible, physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. On a collective level, there are 7 primary karmic patterns that need to be cleared and transcended at this time. This happens on all planets who are entering this phase of their evolution. The patterns that are currently being exaggerated in order to bring them into your awareness so that you can transform them are: 1. Arrogance. 2. Addiction. 3. Prejudice. 4. Hatred. 5. Violence. 6. Victimhood. And 7. Shame. These are the 7 sources of pain, illusion, fear, and separation that are listed in the order they developed in this solar ring, beginning on the planet Venus and expanding to Mars, then Maldek, and finally Earth. You can see this in the book called Pleiadian Perspectives on Human Evolution. How these 7 karmic patterns have culminated on Earth is so obvious that it seems pointless to elaborate very much at this time. Whether the United States has an attitude of supremacy in the world or a New Ager has an attitude of being superior to those who are less aware, the attitude is still arrogance. Whether an alcoholic or a drug addict falls down in the gutter of a city street, or a person stands in front of the mirror obsessing about their appearance, this is addiction. Whether the KKK burn crosses in black people's yards, or a spiritual person looks down on a redneck, it is still prejudice. Whether capitalists hate communists, or the politically correct person hates the loggers and the builders, the attitude is still called hatred. Whether the United States creates war in Iraq, or a parent spanks their child, the activity is still violence. Whether Native Americans, Aborigines, or any other indigenous people are killed and have their land destroyed by white people, or whether squirrels and deers are killed by unaware people driving too fast, the problem is still victimhood. Whether Germany bears the scars of Hitler, or poor people feel unworthy because of their poverty, the feeling is still shame. From the most obvious to the most subtle, each person individually must do their part to recognize and heal these 7 patterns. The variations of individual expression of these 7 main karmic issues are countless. However, if you look closely enough, you can see that the source of every problem on Earth today is one or more of these 7 solar ring karmic patterns. These patterns are accompanied by the absence of awareness of the 4 evolutionary principles: the physical, the spiritual, the emotional, and psychological, which now must also be incorporated. Author's note. The 7 karmic patterns listed above are general to this solar system, although their resolution is being worked out on Earth at this time. There are also 7 primary vices, or ego allurements, that are specific to the Incan mystery school teachings and to planet Earth. They are lust, laziness, gluttony, pride, anger, envy, and greed. In Incan teachings, humans must overcome these ego allurements and attachments prior to attaining spiritual power. Now back to Ra. For those of you who have mastered the behavioral and attitudinal levels of these 7 patterns, or are sincerely working on them, your next step is conscious alignment with your higher self and the higher collective consciousness called divine oneness. This is the purpose of this workbook. It is the desire of the Pleiadian emissaries of light to assist those of you who wish to prepare for these earth changes, who wish to evolve, and who wish to ascend. We, the Pleiadians, have always made ourselves consciously available to beings of this solar ring during times of evolutionary cycle changes, and now we are ready for every one of you. You see, when we began to interact with individuals and groups on your Earth in the mid-20th centuries, about 100 years prior to the end of the current 26,000-year cycle, the people of Earth had asked for a chance to wake up on their own before any large-scale direct communications were made by the hierarchies, namely the Pleiadians, light beings from Sirius, Andromedan emissaries of light, the supreme being of your solar system, the higher council of 12, the great white brotherhood, and other smaller but no less insignificant spiritual groups. We, the Pleiadians, are among you, both in bodies and etherically. Amora Kuan Yin, Barbara Hand Clow, and numerous others are carrying the messages now, as they and other Pleiadians have always done at the end of other major evolutionary cycles on this planet. At the end of the last 26,000-year Pleiadian cycle on Earth, there were less than 1,500,000 humans left on the planet, after the destruction brought about by the pole shifts and other Earth changes at that time. This may sound like a lot of humans, but when you consider that those people were spread out all over the earth, and that prior to that time the population was close to 2 billion people, those humans remaining were few in number. The collective higher consciousness was not as developed at that time, but it did exist, and this consciousness requested that mystery schools be established in every cultural group on the planet. All the people on Earth were to have equal opportunity to learn and grow. As the younger souls whose bodies had died in the earth changes were reborn onto Earth, and the population began to increase again, the spiritual practices and teachings were to be well established, and the lifestyles commensurate with spiritual evolution and awareness. Even today, there are Native American and Mayan groups whose histories of spiritual practice and mystery school teachings are estimated to be roughly 25,000 years old. This is no coincidence. Pleiadian, Syrian, and Andromedan teachers precipitated bodies and helped organize various civilizations such as those in Machu Picchu, Egypt, and even Atlantis. Lemuria had lost most of its land mass and population, but the initiatic temples and teachings were preserved on what is now called Hawaii and even Mount Shasta, California. Different mystery schools were begun at each location, although the information and practices often overlapped. The Order of Melchizedek and the temples of Allura were established in Atlantis. Although the use of crystals had been developed extensively and then lost in previous times, the use of crystals for healing and multidimensional communications re-emerged. Thoth brought solar initiations and consciousness to Egypt, along with advanced spiritual trainings such as teleportation, telekinesis, and Merkaba travel through dimensions and beyond time and space. The Great Egyptian Pyramid was also constructed during this time period for the purpose of receiving and transmitting solar encodings and initiations for the people of Egypt and the whole planet. Sacred dreaming was taught in every culture and evolved into shamanic practices, dream healing, and other methods of multidimensional travel and communications. The Pleiadians, the Syrians, and the Andromedans who taught the people and helped establish the mystery schools often traveled back and forth between dimensions. Many of them specialized in materializing and dematerializing their light bodies and Merkaba, and served as go-betweens for earth beings in subterranean civilizations and the many light ships that were located around the planet at that time. Now these light ships have returned. As the young, less evolved souls began to reincarnate around 25,800 years ago, the higher dimensional teachings continued their relationships with humans for another 300 years in order to assist with the transition into civilizations consisting of many different levels of soul evolution and galactic origin. Some humans were still barely evolved beyond instinctual behavior and survival consciousness. Their next evolutionary step was to be born to more evolved parents, intermarry with more evolved beings, and thereby expand their levels of awareness. Many of the Pleiadians accepted assignments as permanent guides for these young souls as the intermixing began. Some of the Pleiadians even took on human lives and mated with humans in order to help clear the genetic patterns and awaken the urge for spiritual evolution. This process is sometimes referred to as star seeding. It began in earnest again about 75 years ago. Everything was done in response to spiritual requests from or agreements with the higher collective consciousness of Earth dwellers. Earth beings had asked to form their own mystery schools and higher dimensional initiatic schools by evolving, becoming enlightened, and remaining in the higher dimensions around Earth in order to assist their fellow humans. The Great White Brotherhood had previously existed for nearly 15,000 years, at which time there had been a simultaneous group awakening of over 1,000 humans from various cultures on Earth. These 1,000 souls unanimously had agreed to establish the Great White Brotherhood, which at that time was called the Order of the Great White Light, to set a precedent for spiritual enlightenment, ascension, and transcendence on Earth. Some of the members of this Bodhisattva order chose to reincarnate from time to time as ascended master teachers. They experienced both physical birth to spiritual parents and generally became enlightened again by age 21. At that time, they remembered their own past lives, their prior ascension, and their spiritual purpose in that lifetime. These reincarnated bodhisattvas were wonderful and powerful teachers due to the fact that they had more natural camaraderie with Earth people than those who had not been human before. At times, these ascended masters were, and still are today, born into younger soul families with varying degrees of genetic damage, karmic patterning, and ancestral trauma. These bodhisattvas took upon themselves the responsibility of transformation, transmutation, and transcendence of the lower energies in order to create etheric and consciousness maps for others to follow. They have been and are evolutionary forerunners, way-showers, and light workers. The hierarchies agreed to expand the Order of the Great White Light to include enlightened and ascended humans for such roles as the Office of Cosmic Christ Consciousness, the Buddha, the Order of the Merlins, various goddess positions such as that of the Holy Mother and that of Kuan Yin and Mary Magdalene and Mother Mary. Also various kachinas and regional teachers and guides within all of the indigenous cultures. Prior to the beginning of the current 26,000-year cycle, higher dimensional offices, guides, teachers, and planetary spiritual leaders had mostly been light beings from the Pleiades, Sirius, and Andromeda. Now the people were developing enough of their own enlightened and ascended masters to establish their own guides and mystery schools. At the beginning of this current 26,000-year Pleiadian cycle, which began in 2013, it was also requested that, except at crucial and evolutionary turning points, all of the higher teachings and guidance come from those enlightened humans who are living on Earth at this time. All the people of the Earth have to evolve to the point that they are capable of communicating with their higher selves and other solar systems. This is where the Ka teachings come in. The people need to understand how they can hope to accomplish their spiritual goals and become a race of masters on earth. The Pleiadians are teaching them about their higher selves and their Ka bodies, through which they can permanently connect with their higher selves, the higher dimensions, and other solar systems. By living right and evolving and meditating and praying and mastering their own consciousnesses, humans can align with their higher selves permanently. By awakening the divine Ka, they can merge their higher selves with their physical bodies and embody their divine master presence, also known as their Christ selves. There will be a period of time preceding the full enlightenment during which the genetic transmutations will be completed as a result of the flow of Ka energy through their Ka channels as the photon band energy increases, and minute circuitry into the astral bodies and physical bodies' nervous systems, glandular systems, and electrical meridian systems, such as those used in acupuncture and shiatsu, are completed. Approximately 13,000 years ago, several thousand people initiated in the Ka temples in Egypt and Atlantis became enlightened, and many of these people attained the next level, cosmic Christ consciousness, as well. Some chose to remain on Earth and were capable of living for up to 2,000 years in the same body by maintaining their Ka channels and daily spiritual practices. 13,000 years ago also birthed other paths to enlightenment that were successful for the more evolved humans on the planet who were ready at that time. 5,200 years after that, there was a massive earthquake that destroyed most of the remaining temples on Lemuria and half of the landmass of Atlantis. Those members of the Lemurian race who remained on Earth chose to recolonize as a subterranean culture under Mount Shasta. A few of the Lemurians integrated into Native American, Hawaiian, Tibetan, Mayan, Incan, and Buddhist tribes. These former Lemurians served as spiritual leaders and teachers in those cultures. The Atlanteans who survived the earthquakes were still numerous enough to continue their culture. However, as a group consciousness, they asked for the being whose earth name was Thoth to incarnate among their people and re-establish the ancient teachings that had been lost in the quakes. Thoth, who was an individual member of the collective consciousness known as Ra of the Pleiadian archangelic tribes, responded to their requests by being born into a physical human body. He became the spiritual leader of Atlantis. Shortly after Thoth's birth in Atlantis, there was a major breach in Earth's atmospheric time-space continuum, during which a group of beings who had originally invaded Orion from the Lyran system arrived on Earth. Lucifer was leading them and helped them both create the breach and penetrate it afterward. This was accomplished by intense high-frequency transmissions into Earth's atmosphere from outside the solar ring, followed by immediate transport of a ship through the breach it had created. The Orion beings, actually Lyrans, with Lucifer's help, had mastered no time and space travel, enabling them to project through the breach within a millisecond of its creation before they could be stopped. The Lyran and Luciferian interaction with Earth was inevitable at some point in time due to karmic connections between the Lyrans, Lucifer, and some of the humans on Earth from their previous planetary incarnations. They landed in Atlantis as pre-planned because it was the place most conducive to their purpose. Immediately, they began to indoctrinate the Atlanteans with their so-called superior knowledge of technology. The Atlanteans had taken pride in being the most evolved race on Earth at that time, and they were always searching for new areas of mastery, especially with physical elements. The Lyrans manipulated them with promises of unlimited power, evolution of technology, and control with demonstrations of their Lyran superiority via technology, psychic control, and higher intelligence. The Atlanteans were promised that they could have those abilities too if they welcomed the Lyrans and allowed them to infiltrate their culture. Many Atlanteans were immediately distrustful of the Lyrans and discerned the spiritual trap that was being set. However, others were more gullible and hungry for power and supremacy and welcomed the Lyrans wholeheartedly or with an empty heart. For the following 10,000 years, Atlantis was divided into two distinct population segments, one that included the Lyrans and excelled technologically, and one that remained spiritually pure and devoted. The temples of Melchizedek were badly infiltrated by the controlling and manipulative invaders and their influenced humans. A group called the Grey Robes, which later became the Black Robes, was formed. Their focus was on the development of psychic power and black magic. Some of the Melchizedek priests remained pure, but very few. There were temples of Allura in Atlantis at that time that housed goddess-priestess religions whose teachings came from the ninth dimension through a hierarchical order called the Council of Nine. These teachings remained untainted by the Lyrans and Lucifer, and the priestesses openly defied and discouraged involvement with these dark brothers, as they were called. Originally, the Atlanteans who wished to practice the arts of magic and alchemy were first trained spiritually to ensure that they learned the right use of power. But eventually, the spiritual protocol was infiltrated and broke down, and training in psychic power and black magic became widespread. Lucifer was always invisible to the people, but nonetheless was a major subconscious influence. He controlled the Dark Lyran Brotherhood and could possess the bodies of members of the Dark Brotherhood at any time he chose in order to communicate with them or through them to other Atlanteans. Lucifer used this means of reaching the people quite often. His purpose was to break down the Atlanteans' trust in the forces of light that had ruled the planet and solar ring. Eventually, Lucifer hoped to take control of the Supreme Being on Earth. Lucifer and the Lyran Dark Brothers penetrated the consciousness of most of the males of Earth who were vulnerable to psychic control due to their own shadow desires for control and domination, especially over females. A subterranean astral plane, as well as subterranean ceremonial grounds and dwellings, was created where the lower collective consciousnesses of the Dark Brotherhood established territory and sent energy waves and subliminal messages through Earth to the people on the surface. This collective consciousness was, and still is, what you would call Satan. It was created by a fusion of the lower consciousnesses of all of the members of the Lyran Luciferian Dark Brotherhood. This satanic force has the ability to operate as a single large entity. The bigger the collective consciousness grew, with its control and imposed supremacy over the goddess religions, over Gaia herself, the earth, your solar ring, and the portion of the divinity that is here to guide you, the more power this dark force had to generate its own continued growth. The polarization and the belief in dark versus light intensified quickly on Earth as the subconscious minds of humans were bombarded with negative thoughts and images about distrust in God and the divine plan, and the inferiority of females, and the superiority of the mental realm over the emotional and spiritual realms. Technology and black magic grew to proportions never before experienced on Earth. The temples of light became more and more the realm of females, and the temples of darkness became more and more the realm of males. Temples of dark increased vastly in number, while temples of light decreased and had to hide constantly. Of course, this division was not absolute, but it was true for the most part that women worked with the light and men worked with the dark. By the end of the Atlantean era, 10,000 years after the arrival of Lucifer and the Lyrans, chaos and fear were rampant in that civilization. Competition for control and supremacy was the general attitude in Atlantis, and even in the temples of Allura, fear and hiding were prevalent. Before the end of Atlantis, the leaders of the orders and temples that still held the light were warned and advised to disperse their teachings around the globe. It would be a long time before all their higher knowledge could remain in any one place due to the satanic influence upon the people of the earth. Therefore, people trained in all areas of spiritual development left Atlantis in small, secret groups. They took with them many crystals containing Akashic record information that had been channeled and programmed into the crystals by the Council of Truth. One of the crystals that was removed and taken by the high priestesses of the Temple of Allura was taken to Greece and was shaped like the skull of Thoth, who had left Atlantis almost 9,000 years before that point. The crystal skull was buried beneath the temple of the Oracle at Delphi, which this group of priestesses created and operated, and served to protect the temple from the dark subliminal messages and energy waves being sent from beneath the Earth's surface. Since this temple could not be psychically polluted or controlled, the Dark Brotherhood, using the name the Warriors of Zeus, eventually imprisoned and killed the priestesses and claimed the temple for their patriarchal god, Zeus. Other groups took crystals and teachings to Central America, Mexico, Western Europe, the Himalayas, South Africa, East Asia, Australia, South America, and Egypt. Indigenous tribes of the North American continent were in their own unique evolutionary phase at that time, and therefore intermingling with the Atlanteans was inappropriate. The largest group, consisting of both men and women, went to Egypt as per the instructions of the Council of Nine. The people in all the groups were very dedicated to the preservation of divine truth, which is light, which is unconditional love, and spent the rest of their lives establishing initiatic temples and teachings in the various countries and cultures they moved to. The reason the largest settlement was in Egypt was chiefly due to the existence of the Great Pyramid there, as it had always held and still holds today the vibrations of divine truth and solar evolutionary encoding. Many pyramids were to be constructed in Egypt as well as in other locations. They were to be built over large Akashic records crystals placed in various grid formations that would hold the light and prevent lower density vibrations from entering. Several pyramids had been built in Atlantis by the Lyrans and their slaves for the purposes of distorting and controlling the encodings from the sun. But all of these sank beneath the Atlantic Ocean or blew up when Atlantis was destroyed. The final destruction of Atlantis was primarily caused by an underground transmission of sonic waves so intense that it created a sonic boom beneath Earth's surface. It was intended to break up the higher frequency patterns of light in still existing sacred temples, and to infiltrate these temples with the black magic and satanic control energies of the Dark Brotherhood. Instead, however, the sonic boom was so powerful that it echoed back on its own source, reverberating within the nuclear and crystal energy centers that powered the sound generator. This caused a large explosion that created a chain reaction in other subterranean power generators and resulted in earthquakes, the likes of which had never happened before on Earth and have never happened since. Many of the pyramids were literally blown into dust, while a few remained intact. The major earth changes continued for over 2 months until the last of Atlantis was laid to rest at the bottom of the ocean. By then, the people who had left to re-establish spiritual order in other locations were mostly well out of the way of danger and were able to reach their destinations unharmed. A few of the groups who had attempted to leave were not far enough away and were swept up by giant tidal waves resulting from the explosions. The final destruction of Atlantis took place roughly 10,400 years ago. Lucifer collected the Lyrans on the astral planes and began a plan for his next step. The Lyrans chose to remain on the astral planes in both Earth's atmosphere and in the subterranean satanic realms to intensify their influence on the subconscious minds of the people of Earth. As a result, tribal wars and tribal feuds began to occur more frequently all over your planet. Many Native American, African, European, Central and South American indigenous people split apart into separate tribes, whereas in the past they had all been part of a vast brotherhood. Territorial competitions, disputes over mineral and water rights, spiritual differences, and unexplainable distrust became the reasons for the segregation movements. In other areas, the arrival of the spiritual Atlanteans pulled the people together, and the evolution of these various cultures accelerated. The subliminal messages of patriarchal supremacy infiltrated the subconscious realms more and more, but some groups were able, with the help of the Atlanteans or their own evolved spiritual leaders, to withstand these pressures and lies and illusions of fear presented by the negative psychic thought forms of the Luciferian Lyrans. External grids, such as the one at Stonehenge, and medicine wheels were created to stop the destructive astral energies and create safe spaces in which people could hold ceremonies and other gatherings. For the next 5,000 years, the temples of the goddess were strong in many of the new Atlantean lands. Female and male temples alike presented and held the sacred teachings from Melchizedek, Thoth, and Alora. They also expanded their teachings to include the local archetypal deities and spiritual practices. Teachings about the divine feminine and harmony with the divine masculine roles. Teachings of spiritual initiation. Teachings of Ka body templates and healing practices. And teachings of spiritual evolution soared in Egypt, Greece, and parts of Central and South America. Not all of the tribes in other locations were affected by the astral negativity. Some remained pure and humble. But a polarization of light and dark was definitely present. Around 5,000 years ago, 3000 BCE, the Lyrans and their colleagues who had been converted to the Dark Brotherhood began to reincarnate in various spots around the world. Their main objective was to infiltrate the areas of the more spiritually advanced cultures and to incite war and destruction against them. Though this took place gradually over time, the planet experienced many shifts in the ruling forces of the people. Cycles of light and dark occurred in Egypt, Greece, Europe, and Central America. The Dark Brotherhood killed, destroyed, raped, and established their rule. Then the forces of light rebelled and overthrew them, and then the dark overthrew them, and the light overthrew them, which happened over and over. Earth, as a whole, has always maintained alignment with the light, the Supreme Being, also called the Spirit of Oneness, and the Higher Council of 12. However, Earth's population has undergone many changes with respect to the balance of power. Interestingly enough, the majority of people on Earth have always believed in love and goodness, but they have remained weak and ineffectual against the intimidation of governmental and religious forces who operate for the purpose of dark control. The population of Earth has, for the most part, felt powerless to affect the ruling classes for a long time. This is the greatest paradox on Earth. One reason for this fear and powerlessness is the fourth and dimensional astral control by Lucifer, the Lyrans, and the Nibiruans, or Anunnaki. What is important for you to know at this time is that you do have the power and ability to break free from the psychic control of the Anunnaki, the Nibiruans, the Lyrans, and Lucifer. The information and processes in the rest of this workbook will guide and assist you in doing just that. When certain groups first came to inhabit Earth about 150,000 years ago, a large meeting of the collective consciousnesses, including the Pleiadians, Andromedans, etheric guides, Davic kingdoms, and others, was held. It was decided that a hierarchical structure would be created that would allow as much room for trust and security as possible. This was due to past experiences among the new Earth arrivals with betrayal by members of the higher realms and deep-seated self-doubt. The self-doubt was the main impetus for the group to demand rulership. The new Earth dwellers simply did not trust themselves to make important decisions or to be sovereign. Their request was met by the spiritual hierarchies, who agreed that when the time came for a supreme being to be appointed for your planet, there would be a structure of descending spiritual authority with the power to override any decision made by the supreme being. The most immediate structure under the supreme being would be called the Higher Council of 12. Its members would consist of 4 delegates each from the Pleiades, from Sirius, and from the Andromedan galaxy. All of the members would be highly evolved light beings, of course. Unless the higher council of 12 agreed by consensus with an order from the Supreme Being, the decision in question would be overridden. In this way, the people of Earth would know, at least subconsciously, that they were free of the possibility of corruption in the spiritual hierarchy. There would even be a double safeguard within the structure of the higher council of 12. At least 2 members of different origins would be responsible for each area of authority in the next lower realm. For example, in the area of giving instructions to and overseeing the work of the healing angels, 1 Pleiadian and 1 Andromedan would overlap in their responsibilities, and neither could do anything about which the other disagreed. This type of structure still exists throughout all of the higher dimensional offices and groups, by the way. The planetary belief in the need for authorities to rule and make important decisions for you must now be removed. You are ready to become fully accountable, divine, sovereign beings. The existence of so much corruption in government and religion is a product of the lack of trust and self-trust still on Earth. As the Age of Light, also called the Age of Enlightenment, unfolds, it will become increasingly important to end patriarchal systems of government and religion and to return true power to the people. Those who are not capable of handling this responsibility without bringing harm to others can be kept from posing a threat with a group decision-making process. No elected officials will preside. Roles such as meeting facilitator, reporter, and any others required will rotate among the voluntary members who are willing to serve in that capacity. In this way, one person or a small contingent can never assume authority over others. What is needed at this time is for the people of Earth to find the spiritual courage to demand what you need. Of course, many of the well-meaning citizens of Earth have become enmeshed in the struggle for survival and have forgotten about spiritual ideals whatsoever. However, most humans understand basic morality and desire love. This gives Earth a tremendous opportunity for a spiritual quantum leap at this time. The higher collective consciousness of all human beings on Earth has asked for a chance to create something that has never happened before: planetary ascension. If this occurs, Earth and all her people will move together into a 4th and 5th dimensional, 4th and 5th density consciousness and separate their 3D awareness completely from the satanic and controlling astral planes. The present ongoing control by destructive forces is based on and held in place by 2 things. 1. The illusion of the supremacy of hate and fear over love. And 2. The belief that the dark is more powerful than the light. The third factor is even the belief in an eternal struggle between the forces of light and dark, which is a lie. If by 2050 the entire remaining population of Earth can eliminate those 2 beliefs and the third sub-belief, and recognize and accept the 4 spiritual principles mentioned earlier, the evolution of your physical, emotional, spiritual, and psychological bodies, this planet will be the first ever to accomplish such a spiritual leap. In order for there to be any hope of this great event taking place between now and 2050, a minimum of, but of course not limited to, 144,000 human beings must become enlightened and embody cosmic Christ consciousness. When this critical mass of awakened beings is reached, it will be the second coming of Christ en masse. At that time, the 100th monkey effect will occur. A vibrational wave of enlightenment, ascension energy will move through the entire planet and its population, eradicating the lower astral thought forms and realms, and dissolving the veils that separate humans from their own inner experience of divinity. The entire population of Earth will feel this enlightenment wave as it penetrates all existence on the planet. Planetary enlightenment and ascension, and the inherent soul purpose of spiritual evolution will be activated at that time. If the Lyrans, the Anunnaki, Lucifer, and the members of the Dark Brotherhood, as well as humans who have aligned with darkness, choose spiritual surrender, at that time they will simply join the planetary ascension and be released from their own past karma. Those who do not choose the light will experience the destruction of the planet and will find themselves in a galactic recovery center, so to speak. They will be given opportunities for evolution and divine alignment, and they will have no judgment placed upon them. If they request freedom to explore darkness, after a certain amount of time, they will be sent to another galaxy and another planet in which that option still exists. Even if something as extreme as a planetary explosion were to occur, the 144,000 or more cosmic Christed souls would simply move into their ascension bodies and take the rest of Earth's newly awakened people with them. When the critical mass of 144,000 Christs is reached, the impact of these Christed beings on the rest of the people will be so powerful that each of them will have the ability to pull 144,000 other humans into the higher realms of consciousness. In other words, 144,000 Christed ones will create a quantum leap for 20,736,000,000 humans. The dark veil, or dark net, as it has been called, that surrounds the outer atmosphere of Earth will implode. This will allow the full galactic encodings to impulse Earth through the Sun. No lower astral planes will be left unaffected, and all of the people will have the white light, or Shaktiput, experience, after which they will find themselves on the new 5D Earth that is more beautiful and clear than anyone has ever been able to imagine. They will be on this Earth, but in the fourth density, or fifth dimension. Those who have ascended in previous lifetimes will move straight to the fifth dimension, or even higher, and still remain etherically on Earth. Training schools are already being prepared in advance for these new spiritual beings who will become fourth density beings. They will learn about their own creations of their past lives, their soul origins and purposes, and all the spiritual teachings appropriate to their current level of evolution. A grace period of 1,000 years will envelop Earth, during which peace and spiritual evolutionary focus will be prevalent. In other words, the mystery schools will be the center of all activity for the entire next 1,000 years. At the end of that time, Earth will officially step into the galactic role of home of the cities of light and mystery school for other third-dimensional planets. You will become the guardians and teachers for third-dimensional life forms, as we, the Pleiadians, have been for you. If you are successful, which we trust you will be, a giant wave of love and joy from the union of the higher collective consciousness with the third and fourth dimensional consciousness will emanate through the entire Milky Way galaxy. This enlightenment and planetary ascension wave will instantaneously transmute all remaining karma and lower astral energies in your solar ring into pure light and unconditional love, just as the planetary enlightenment wave will do for the Earth and her people by the year 2050. The power of this wave will be felt and will have impact on the entire galaxy and therefore all of existence. Why? The position of this galaxy in relationship to the great central sun, all that is Hunab, has just undergone a cycle change, as previously mentioned. The evolutionary name for this new cycle is called the evolutionary spiral of mastery. Each solar ring of the Milky Way galaxy must step up into its next highest evolutionary paradigm. For Earth and your solar ring, that step is to become home to the cities of light, comprised of light beings who have specifically gone through physical incarnations and achieved enlightenment. At the end of that first 1,000 years of peace, your planet will become exclusively a race of Christed beings. The Pleiadian Lightwork program, and especially the Ka aspect of Pleiadian Lightwork, is one of the avenues of healing and awakening that we, the Pleiadians, are bringing to you at this time. It is essential that your Ka channels and Ka template be cleared of your own individual karmic residue and blocked energies in order to enable your higher Christ self to anchor into the physical realm through your own individual body. You are among the 144,000 or more who will bring about the age of enlightenment, the age of light, the golden age, the age of ascension, the new age, the new 5D Earth. The materials presented in this workbook will assist you in making that transition and becoming available for and conducive to the higher frequencies of the Ka, and therefore your Christ body, your master presence, your Merkaba. We have faith in you and your planet's higher consciousness. Although the future looks good, you must not allow any laziness or resistance or fear or arrogance to stop your progress towards ascension. As long as you do your part and are willing to become the best you are capable of being, we will be there, assisting you in any way that is appropriate for us. We will never, however, usurp your own learning and growth. You are here to become masters by activating your divine free will. You are not victims who need to be rescued. Let no one tell you that they will do your work for you or save you. That cannot be done. It is time for you to save yourselves through persistent and dedicated healing, growth, and continual spiritual awakening, which is done through self-love. With willingness and determination, all divine things are possible. Sola Re En Lo, with great love and devotion. Ra, spokesperson for the Pleiadian angelic tribes of light, members of the Pleiadian emissaries of light, guardians of this solar ring, members of the Galactic Federation of Light of the Great Central Sun.